Hello learners, my name is Nadi Jabomiria, Microsoft MVP in Business Applications. I'm the founder of Apprau, a Microsoft partner specializing in business applications. In this video, I talk about Power Platform pipelines, a recent feature released by Microsoft. This video is a recording of my presentation at the Melbourne Dynamics 365 and Power Platform User Group's April 2023 session. First of all, let's talk about ALM. ALM stands for Application Lifecycle Management. Every IT organization must have a good ALM process to develop, improve, and maintain their software systems. The first step of software development is planning and discovery. Teams need to understand what to develop, when to develop, and why. Once the product backlog is defined and the features prioritized, development teams will develop the solution, perform unit tests, system integration tests, and deploy the solution to higher environments such as UAT and production. And once it's in production, you go through an operation, day-to-day operation, and you find, when you look at the application, you find there could be some issues, or you might find, customers asking for more features. And then you go back to your planning and then development, and the cycle goes round and round. So generally, that's what the application lifecycle management. So if you have a look at this, so this is essentially the same thing, but you probably heard about DevOps. So the lifecycle you can kind of split into two parts. So the plan, develop, build, test part is sort of your development part of it. And then you have, you release and deploy, monitor. That's more operational side of the life cycle. So this is a common term as well. So what are pipelines in general? So pipelines are there to sort of automate the build, test, and deployment of solutions from a source environment and deploy to a target environment. So traditionally, let's say in general software development, you would have, let's say you're developing a .NET application or website, and you have your code, and then you can automate the build process of your source code or your application. And then you can also have your test scripts that you have, and then you can deploy that to different environments. So when you automate, you can automate all of these from using pipelines. So this is so if you're a professional developer, you're probably already familiar with Azure pipelines. So this is what I mentioned. You edit your code, you can push it to a code repository. Maybe it can be Azure DevOps, could be GitHub, whichever it is, and then you can automate the process of building, testing, and it'll create certain artifacts. So it's your DLL files or other HTML files, etc. And then you can create the pipeline to go from to different target environments. So typically, I'll go into a bit more detail about environments, but typically you will have development, test, or production. I've seen some organizations have like 5 different environments to manage that whole application development process. So this is what to use sort of Azure pipelines. Usually it's built for professional developers. So for sort of citizen developers or sort of functional consultant, it's not really easy to use, I would say. So what are Power Platform pipelines? So this is I asked Bing what it is, and Bing says It is a feature that allows you to automate ALM for Power Platform and Dynamics. And you can use pipelines to deploy solutions to across different environments with few clicks. Pipelines are designed to be easy for all makers. So this was interesting. It says all makers, admins, and developers, right? So this is not just for developers. So the important thing is if you're a functional consultant or a citizen developer or sort of administrator, you can set this up and manage the whole deployment process, right? So I think that's quite important. All right. So to do this, we need to sort of understand few different things. Now there's a concept called environment. So I'm sure some of you already know a lot of these things. In case you don't know, so I'll sort of quickly cover a bit of overview. So environment is, it's like you can create a new brand new environment. Let's say if you have a development purposes. So in my one, I have a Apprau core dev environment, and that's where I do all my changes, my development activities. And then once I finish development of certain thing, then I would deploy that to a staging environment. So this is where I would do testing, integration testing, and once that's all completed, then I'll put it into production. So production environment is the one that we would enable it for the your general end users for the whole organization, right? So usually ordinary users won't get access to dev or staging. It's only for sort of the IT team or the development team. Yeah, so that's a little bit about environments. Now, if you look at the list of environments, so this is a screenshot from the Power Platform Admin Center. You'll notice that there's a flag called managed, right? So for us to be able to use Power Platform pipelines, it needs to be a managed environment, right? So so there's it says enabled managed environment. So you need to tick this box and enable it. I'll show you how to do that. So what's the reason for managed environment? So this is again a more recent feature. So there are some features in there. It's primarily useful for a lot of governance processes. You would get, if you're an admin, you would get emails about the usage and any issues with those environments, etc. I think going forward, Microsoft will create more and more features in this that's in the managed environments. For these pipelines, it is a requirement that it's the environment is a managed environment. So you need to just keep that in mind. Okay, so this is a typical example. So to set up the pipelines, you need a host environment. So I'll talk to you a bit about that. So host environment is not your development, staging, or production. It's a sort of a completely separate one, purely to managing the pipeline process. If you used, I would say, Power Platform Center of Excellence kit, again, you would have a separate one. Maybe you can share the same environment for this purpose. But just remember, host is separate to your typical normal pipeline environments. And so in my example, I have development, staging, and production. And I mark them as, so this icon is a managed environment icon. So these three needs to be managed, but the host doesn't need to be managed, right? So that's again important. I don't know if it's managed, if it matters or not, but it doesn't have to be for sure. All right, so next concept we need to know is the solutions, right? So if you've done any work with Dataverse or Power Apps, you should know about solutions. If you don't know, you're doing something wrong. So solution is super important concept. Essentially, it is your like a container to keep all the changes that you're doing for your solution or for your application. So it could include, sorry. So it's just sorry, too early. Yeah, so it's just the container, right? So if you look at this example, so when I installed Dynamics 365 or Power Apps portals, Microsoft installed all different types of solutions. And each solution, if you look at this, it's one for identity, one for forms, one for storage, etc. So it's just to nicely package up different solutions, different components into a package. And I mentioned the word component. So what is a component? Component can be anything that is part of your application. So it could be a table, could be a column or column inside the table. It could be a form. It could be a Power Automate flow. It could be a chart. Could be a plugin assembly. It could be anything that's used to create that is part of your application. So what you do normally is you take your components and put it into your solution, and then solution is the one thing that you deploy from one environment to the other. All right. So in the past, what we used to do was you would create a solution and then you would export that. So probably can't see it here. So there's a button called export. You will tick this, you export the solution, and then you switch to the other environment, and then you import the solution. So you have to manage everything by yourself. I used to sort of keep a track of all my the files or zip files that it created in a certain folder, and I had to manually kind of manage all of that, how it, which one I deployed, which one I didn't deploy, all of that I had to manually manage. So with the pipelines, it's all managed for you. So it's very easy, simple, click solution, and I'll show you how to set that up. Okay, so like I said, the first step is to enable, if your environment is already not a managed environment, first step is to enable that as a managed environment. So in here, so you can see the managed environment, production environment is not managed. So I want to enable that. So all you have to do is select the environment, click enable managed environment. And then you get a simple screen. You can set some limits if you want. There's few features you can have a look, but essentially just enable it, right? That's it. And then it doesn't take that much time. It just immediately becomes a managed environment. Second step is to install the Power Platform pipeline solution. So to do this, all you have to do is go to your host environment. So you probably remember that there was a list of environment. Go to the host, which is the unmanaged one. And then click on this under Resources, Dynamics 365 Apps. And then up at the top here, there's Install App. And then it gives you all the available apps or solutions, solution list, and then application list, and select the Power Platform pipelines and click next. Just agree the terms, make sure you read every single word of it, and click install. So once it's installed, it probably takes 10 minutes, not that doesn't take too long. You'll notice that there are it installed 3 solutions. So this deployment metadata, deployment model app, and an anchor solution, right? All right, so that's the first step. Now we've installed the pipelines. It's all we have to do now is configure the pipelines. How do we do this? You will see. Maybe I'll switch to the real environment. Give me a second. All right. Hope you guys can still see my screen. Okay. So you'll notice, so I'm in the host environment, and in there, when I go to apps, now I have this application, model-driven app, called deployment pipeline configuration, right? So this is that app. Now in this, so this is simple model-driven app. This is what we're going to use to configure our pipeline. It's very, very easy to use. Step 1, define all your environments, right? So you go here, you click new, right? So I will probably open an existing one. So there's environment type, which is there's 2 types. One is development, and the other one is target. So the first one, select the, I named it as development, and select the environment type as environment. And then you need to find the environment ID and put it there. So where do you find that? So if you go to admin.powerplatform.com and go to environments and click on one of the environments, you'll see the environment ID here, right? So you need to come here and copy that, and then paste it into this environment ID field, and just click save, right? So once you click save, it will go through a validation process. There's something, a plugin runs in the background. Make sure that ID is correct. It's a real ID, and then you see a validation status called success, right? And the next step is to go create all your other target environments, right? So because what you're going to do is, if I show you this one, what we're going to do is deploy your solution from development to staging, and then staging to production, right? Now in your environment, if you have 4 or 5, then you'll go from, sorry, one second. You'll go from one, maybe staging to SIP to UAT to pre-production to production, whatever the setup that you have, right? So you have to define all the other target environments as well. So for example, I go here, put a name called staging, and find the environment ID for that one, make it as target, right? So go through all of them and create all of your target environments. And next step is to define your pipeline. Again, it's very straightforward. Create new, click here. I'll just open what I have. All you have to do is give it a name first and save, right? That's all it needs to start with. Then there are two sections here. You have to give the pipeline which environment is your actual development environment, right? So in this linked development environment section, go to because you already got set up the environments, all you need to do is say add existing environment and select the one you want, and then add, right? So when you do that, the development environment will come here. And then we need to set up the stages. So in my example, I got two stages. First one is deploy to staging, which means I will deploy a solution from development to staging. And the second step is to deploy to production. So with this one, I will deploy to from staging to production, right? So important thing to remember here is it will this process will make sure the solution that I deploy to staging is the solution that I'm going to deploy to production, right? So so you know the production solution is the one that you actually tested in staging. So if there's no human error element to this, because it's automated, you know exactly which solution that's going to go. Yeah, so if you look at this one, the very first one, ignore this side. This stage, actually, what I'll do, I'll just create a new one. So if I do new, all you need to do is define the previous one and the target one, right? So the very first one, because you are going from development to staging, you don't have a previous deployment. So you don't have to select anything. All you have to do is select the staging, right? And in my one here, I said deploy to staging, right? So there's no previous. In the second one, because we are going from staging to production, I do have a previous stage, right? So this stage is actually this record, the previous record. Done. That's it. We've configured our pipelines, right? So very easy. No need of any development code or Visual Studio, DevOps, nothing. It's just if you know how to use a model-driven app, you can define your pipeline. Okay, so how do we now actually deploy a solution? Okay, so let me show you a previous example. So what I'm doing here is, so I went to make.paras.com. I'm in the core dev environment, right? I'm going to the solutions area and I'm opening a specific solution. Okay, now you'll notice that there's a new menu item called pipelines. If you click that, let's have a look what we see here, right? Have a closer look. So we have two pipelines defined, and I'm interested in the pipeline one. You can see in the development environment, the solution version is 1004. And it tells me that I've installed that same version on February 25th into staging environment, right? And the previous deployment to production is actually 1002, right? So, so let's say I have tested this solution in staging. We're happy with 1004. It's time to deploy to production. All I have to do is click this. Click next. It's probably doing some validation. Let's have. Yeah, so it's going through some validation process. Seems to be happy with everything, and click deploy. All right, so yeah, so now it's doing the deployment to production. Yeah. Okay. So in this one, we don't have to do any export, save files, zip files, nothing. We just hit the button and it does the full deployment. So while that's happening, let's go back to our deployment pipeline configuration model-driven app, and have a look at a few other things. First one is run history, right? So you can see today, I just kicked off. The start time is, I think it's UTC. Anyway, so I just kicked off deployments. So you can see that says started, right? So still going. But I also have several deployments in the past. So this application keeps track of all of those things, all of those deployments that we've done in the past. So there's no issue or risk that people done didn't follow the processes or ad hoc deployed in the wrong time or anything. We can see all the actions that we performed in in our environment. And if you look at the dashboard, it keeps track of, obviously there's this is pretty basic, but as you go, you will see a lot more information that you can see here. And if you sort of feeling I don't know, curious, you can also click this button with the Power BI visualization, and then play around with this as well if you want to extract very specific reports and change your reporting. This is a handy one as well. If you haven't played around with it, just check it out. It can take, it's doing it real time, so it can take a little while to load, but once it's loaded, it's pretty good. And the next thing pretty interesting is the deployment, solution of artifacts. So if I look at this one, you'll see the managed solution is there, right? So it keeps everything within the solution, right? So the file is there, and if you ever want to download it for some reason, then you can do it from here as well, right? Yeah, so that's the bit of that. This is still going. While that's happening, let's go to maybe the second one as well. All right, so with this one, see in here, this is a brand new solution, never been deployed. And you see this, because there's nothing in staging, you can't actually deploy anything to production as well. So we can do the same. We're deploying to staging. Pretty straightforward. Ooh, something's broken. So, well, that's pretty good. So it seems to have done some validation of the solution, and it's not happy with it. All right, cool. So we had to go and figure that out. So something wrong with our solution, right? Never mind about that. Okay, so that's pretty much it. Let me see what else we have.
Najia, Darren Lachlan here. Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Yeah, hi, Darren here. That's a really good information you've given, a good presentation. And sorry if I'm asking a question, and apologies. I had to step out for a couple of minutes. So if you've answered this, I apologize. And you just showed it briefly there. So I've done quite a bit of manual ALM across to different, and one of the things that constantly trips me over is when I'm doing an upgrade or an update and there are dependency issues. How does this show those? And then you get a spreadsheet with all this, or an XML, I should say, I think it is, with all these, with what the issues are. How does this capture this, and how would you resolve them? Does it have the same sort of thing? And have you hit those conflicts before?
I think, see, that part is still the same, right? So for example, how do I explain this?
Because you're not going through the same import map solution thing. It's doing it. I imagine the pipeline's doing it for you, isn't it? I mean, it's doing the same thing.
Yeah, it's the same thing, right? So it's just automates the exporting and importing process and just streamline that process. The rest is still the same. Like,
so will the same pop-up come with will the same menu on the side to say there's dependency issues? Because if you're missing, is that the same menu, same?
Yeah, so that's interesting, right? So it looks like when we ran this one just then, right?
Yeah,
it kind of broke, right? Yeah.
Yeah, you got that sort of error. Yeah.
Yeah. So with this one, it didn't give us the. I know what you're talking about. So
yeah,
the button to download the Excel file.
Yeah.
It didn't actually give me that option, right? So
well, that could be a different error, but yeah, it's
so,
worth testing to take a dependency away and see what it does. I'm not saying now, but
yeah,
some stage, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. So obviously this just went to GA,
yeah,
right? I have a feeling those things some of the additional features will come.
The other piece that will be interesting to see is, again, when you do the import, you get the option to do an upgrade or an update, or I can't remember what there's a couple of other options as well. Yeah. Again, I can't see at this stage, I can't see those different, not that you use them much because most people do the default, but occasionally you need to do the full upgrade. And I can't see the option here in which that is.
Yeah, I can't see it here. So you're talking about if you do, especially if you do a patch.
Correct.
I haven't tested it in here, like but I know what you're talking about. If you're doing a patch to clone a patch, for example.
Yeah. Well, there's that, but there's also import. If you try to import the zip file, you get the options in some cases. But yeah, anyway, as I said, it probably come in further versions.
Yeah, I don't think it's full parity. And like I said, it's probably the first GA version.
Sure.
And I think that some of those options will come through. To be honest, I haven't tried that one, like especially with the patch. I know when you normally import a solution, even if it's a normal managed solution, you get that upgrade option.
Yeah.
Or stage to upgrade, or I think that's what you're talking about. Yeah, I couldn't see that either. So I think it'll probably come later on.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. It's good presentation. Thank you.
Najina, while we're asking questions, may I throw one in as well?
Sure.
So I've been building a couple of portals and tried to do some ALM with one of my portals at one stage and struck all sorts of problems because I couldn't. And I'm going demonstrate my lack of experience here compared to some on the call, I'm sure. Trying to, I don't believe you can actually incorporate a portal into the solution. It's a separate, the web app itself is separate, but you can incorporate your model-driven apps and so forth in, as I understand it.
Correct.
So if you're using ALM here or the pipelines to deploy a portal-based solution, from dev to staging to test, you've still got to have a test version of the portal built as well. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is that right?
Yeah, no, that's right.
Okay, so once you've deployed this to staging, you then need to connect up from staging to your your staging version of your web app, your portal app.
Yeah, so portal, the big difference with portal is it doesn't use solution components. It's essentially just move data, right?
Yeah.
So you have to move data from your dev to staging to production, and it's not supported through this pipeline process. If you haven't used it, what I normally use is in the XRM toolbox that you see here, there's a plugin called Portal Records Mover, and that takes care of that, right?
Okay.
So it's a lifesaver. Otherwise, yeah, you can't deal with this
complete
manually.
rebuild. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
So
no, that's useful. Thank you.
Yeah, just check it out because you can select exactly which records that you want to move, and then you can export it to a XML file, and then you switch to the other environment and upload the XML file, similar to the old-fashioned solution import process, but this is record, so it'll move the records properly. So use that for portals.
You can possibly use YAML as well. It's in Azure DevOps, so there's in Marketplace. You can just install the Power Platform. I think it's specifically for solution, for portal deployment. And the good thing with that is you can actually see what was changed, because I think here you can't really see what exactly was changed in the XRM toolbox. You can see what components were changed, but you can't see what exactly. But I think that you can just see, you can compare the previous and the next version, which is good.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah, just one thing here. So can we also deploy Power BI components with this automated pipeline or not at this stage?
Power BI components. So I haven't played around with it, but I believe if you go to Power BI, that there is a the pipeline process that looks a bit different. But this is mainly for Dataverse side. But if I see it, I'll share in this with you a bit. But I have seen that's coming up specifically for Power BI. Okay, that's good. Only thing I think I can say here is if you have let's say in here, if you have a Power BI report embedded as part of it, you can move that, but not the actual Power BI itself. Yeah. Any other questions?
I think I will say again, if anyone has any question, please feel free to unmute yourself, or you can use chat if you want to ask. Natija, meanwhile, I will ask a couple of things. If you have experience or explored any of these, please let us know. First thing is probably just when we are doing deployments using Azure DevOps, you remember we have option of approval, like one person approve or maybe 2 persons. So probably we will not have that sort of approval here.
Not yet.
Not yet.
I'll say not yet. Might come.
Yeah. And another thing was what I could feel was probably, as you also have described, that pipelines, configuring those pipelines is more for developers, but having this feature is more for app makers, so they can easily configure pipelines, and so that is a great feature. But have you explored, Natija, like when sometime in Azure DevOps, when we are doing deployments, we can sometimes get latest from code from Git repository or any repository. I believe that will be another limitations we will have here.
Yeah, I think it's in their roadmap
Okay.
because yeah, the good thing with DevOps, you can use the solution packager, pack and unpack.
Yeah.
Put your code into source control, the whole configuration into source control, right? So at the moment, this doesn't support that. 100% correct.
Right.
And yeah, my understanding is it's that type of features will also come
Yeah.
soon. Like some this is really useful at the moment. Like if your organization doesn't have developers and you're really using the low code, no code approach to building apps, this is definitely quite handy because they can easily anyone citizen developer or
Yeah.
functional consultant they can the makers can just do the deployment.
No doubt, it's a great feature for app makers or people who are less techy.
Yeah, I mean, if you have a large, development team with developers, and if you're doing a lot of complex stuff, a lot of code, then this is probably not the right approach. There are other ways to tackle this.
Yeah, exactly. And Natija, just imagine I am a simple app maker. I don't have administrator privileges or a Azure account. Will I still able to? I'm not sure if you have experienced this, but for an app maker, will they need any special account in Azure or permissions, or just with their permissions they will able to configure it?
That's a good question. So setting up the pipeline, this is simply another app, right? So as long as you give enough access to create these records, then that's sufficient. I do need to check though from here to hit the deploy button, what kind of access you need. I'm not sure. In my environment, I got global admin, so I haven't explored that one, but it's a good question. I would say it's not necessarily for everyone. You probably need some permissions, at least maybe Power Platform Maker type role. That might be enough, but we need to check that.
Thank you so much, Nadija. I will once again share my screen and we will wait maybe another minute if someone wants to ask any questions.
I just had one more, Nadija. Can you only deploy between environments in the same tenancy using pipelines, or can you deploy across tenancy? Okay.
Yeah, just same ones.
And Nadija, will we need to follow the order the way you were explaining from dev to maybe test, from test to prod? Will we need to follow the sequence, or we can skip the sequence as well?
It depends on how you set up the pipeline, right? So I think if you have a step in that I think what do you call it? It's called, when you set up the pipeline, there was deployment stages. So if you say if you put a skip one, I would say probably allow it. I haven't tested that though. I think it's a good idea to control that as well. Like not to, it's best practice is to go from dev to sit to UAT to production. So I would keep it, even if you can do it, I would control it.